Damon Voss had spent years surrounded by people who feared him, obeyed him, or wanted something from him. Then, beneath a violent Chicago storm, he saw a woman risk her life for a stranger without knowing anyone powerful was watching. He had just left a private waterfront meeting after learning that someone inside his organization was selling protected transportation routes to a rival crime family. Outside, heavy rain swept across the Chicago River District, blurring glass towers, illuminated bridges, and historic buildings reflected in the black water. Damon's guard prepared his armored convoy when a wounded courier stumbled from beneath an underpass. 2 armed men pursued him through the flooded street. Pedestrians scattered. Arden Cole did not. Still wearing dark hospital scrubs beneath a raincoat, she dropped her medical bag and rushed toward the injured man. A frightened teenage boy followed him from the shadows. Arden immediately placed herself between the boy and the gunman, shielding him while pressing both hands against the courier's bleeding side. Damon watched from across the street. She controlled the bleeding with the calm focus of someone accustomed to chaos. She protected the undocumented boy even as police sirens approached and strangers abandoned the area. Unlike everyone around Damon, Arden did not recognize him. She showed no fear of his guards, his convoy, or the authority that usually changed the atmosphere wherever he stood. Before losing consciousness, the courier slipped a small silver compass into Arden's open medical bag. Damon recognized it instantly. The compass had belonged to Lila, his younger sister, who had supposedly died 12 years earlier in a warehouse fire. He moved toward Arden, but rival gunmen entered from the opposite end of the street as police vehicles blocked the intersection. Arden helped place the boy inside an arriving ambulance, then disappeared into the rain before Damon's guards could identify her. What began as a search for answers quickly became something more dangerous. Damon ordered Gideon Shaw to examine traffic cameras, hospital records, train platforms, bridge footage, and private security systems. Within hours, guards monitored every major road leaving downtown Chicago. Port deliveries stalled. Private clubs closed early. Political meetings were interrupted as Damon's men searched for one unidentified woman. Gideon warned that turning the city upside down could expose weakness inside the Voss empire. Damon refused to stop. He needed to know how Lila's compass had survived the fire, but Arden's courage had unsettled him in a way he could not explain. She had protected people no one else considered important. At her small apartment, Arden finally discovered the compass inside her medical bag. When she opened it, she found a miniature photograph of Lila standing beside Theo Cole. Arden had spent most of her life believing her father abandoned their family. The photograph suggested he had been involved with the Voss organization before disappearing. Naomi Pierce helped examine the compass and found a numerical code engraved beneath the image. Before they could decode it, black vehicles entered Arden's neighborhood. Damon's investigators had identified her through hospital security footage. Her name also appeared in Lila's sealed archive. Inside that archive, Damon found a 12-year-old photograph showing a teenage Arden standing beside Lila only hours before the warehouse fire. The photograph changed Damon's search from obsession into something far more dangerous. If Arden had been beside Lila hours before the warehouse fire, then she might have witnessed the event that shaped his entire life. Damon ordered Gideon to find her without harming her, but his command spread through Chicago like permission for intimidation. Security teams entered hospitals, shelters, train stations, and immigrant neighborhoods. Guards questioned residents based on race, income, and immigration status, treating entire communities as suspicious because Arden might be hiding among people powerful institutions rarely protected. When Damon discovered what was happening, the damage had already begun. His organization had always used fear most aggressively against those least able to challenge it. For the first time, he saw that pattern through Arden's eyes. Finding her would mean nothing if his methods made him more terrifying than the people pursuing her. Arden hid inside the legal clinic where she volunteered. From its upper windows, she watched black vehicles move through streets that had once offered anonymity. Hospital employees had been questioned. Apartment buildings near her home had been searched. Roads were blocked without explanation. The city had become a prison designed around one woman. Naomi recorded the illegal searches while Arden studied the compass. Part of the engraved code led to a Voss-owned shipping company. Old records showed that the company had transported undocumented workers who later disappeared after reporting stolen wages and forced labor. The wounded courier had not been carrying a random family object. He had been moving evidence connected to a trafficking network protected by the Voss Empire. At his mansion overlooking Lake Michigan, Damon reviewed Lila's archived financial records. She had investigated the same shipping company before her death. Gideon dismissed her work as false information. Damon immediately became suspicious. Gideon referred to specific accounts and witness statements that had never appeared in the official report. Meanwhile, Arden and Naomi prepared to leave Chicago. They entered a crowded elevated train station near the Gold Coast, hoping the afternoon traffic would hide them. Damon tracked Arden's route and reached the station before his guards. He saw her across the platform for the second time. Arden noticed him immediately. His controlled posture, the security teams below, and the blocked exits revealed the truth. Every road closing around her belonged to him. Before Damon could approach, a rival gunman fired from the crowd. Damon pulled Arden behind a steel support beam as the bullet struck the platform railing. In the confusion, she escaped through an emergency exit, leaving behind a blood-stained hospital identification card. Damon now possessed her name, occupation, and home address. Yet he ordered his men to leave her family and co-workers untouched. It was the first time his need to find her openly conflicted with the methods that had built his power. Naomi traced the remaining compass code to a protected property in the Ozark National Forest. Arden decided the only way to escape the city was to follow the evidence beyond it. As Arden and Naomi traveled south, Damon examined private security footage from a night of the storm. The recording showed Gideon meeting the wounded courier 3 hours earlier, placing Lila's compass in his hand, and later ordering armed men to kill him. Damon finally found the woman who had occupied every road, camera, and guarded intersection in Chicago, only to discover that she might possess enough evidence to destroy everything carrying his family name. Arden and Naomi reached an abandoned lodge hidden deep inside the Missouri Ozarks. Waterfalls thundered beyond the trees. Clear rivers cut through limestone valleys, and wet wooden bridges disappeared beneath dense green woodland. The compass code opened a concealed chamber beneath the lodge. Inside, Arden found shipping records, employee files, photographs, and financial accounts tied to Voss transportation routes. The documents revealed forced labor, stolen wages, trafficking, and disappearances involving immigrant workers whose families had been too frightened to approach authorities. The crimes had continued because prejudice made the victims easy to ignore. Damon arrived after following Gideon's track vehicle, but he approached separately to avoid alerting his own security teams. He entered the underground room and found Arden surrounded by accounts bearing the Voss name. She immediately assumed he had come to destroy them. Instead, Damon blocked Gideon's armed men from entering the property and ordered the guards still loyal to him to hold their positions. Before either side could move, rival gunmen attacked the lodge. Damon, Arden, and Naomi escaped into the forest as bullets tore through the wooden walls. Damon stayed behind long enough to keep Arden from being captured, taking a deep cut across his side before following them toward the river. Their escape carried them across rain-soaked trails and onto a narrow bridge above a violent waterfall. The structure shook beneath their weight, while armed men moved through the trees behind them. Inside a hidden shelter beyond the bridge, Arden treated Damon's injury. Their connection deepened through action rather than promises. Damon had risked his life for her, but Arden refused to forget that he had benefited from the empire connected to the victims. Damon did not defend his ignorance. Instead, he began separating the guards loyal to him from those secretly reporting to Gideon. He also copied the recovered evidence and transferred it to several secure locations so no single attack could erase it. Within a nearby limestone cave, Naomi discovered an old recording created by Lila. The damaged message revealed that Theo Cole had helped Lila investigate the trafficking network. Lila believed someone inside the Voss family had ordered both witnesses to disappear. Damon realized a warehouse fire might have been staged to silence his sister rather than kill her. The compass contained another hidden compartment. Inside were coordinates linked to a private facility in Colorado. Damon suspended the city-wide search for Arden, proving that he was no longer trying to capture or possess her. He offered his resources to help locate Theo, but Arden remained cautious. Powerful men often rename control as protection. Gideon's guards soon surrounded the forest. Naomi sealed a copy of the files inside a waterproof case and sent downstream toward an investigative contact. Arden and Damon escaped through a flooded cave passage beneath the waterfall. When they reached safety, Naomi decoded the Colorado facility's current prisoner list. One name should have been impossible. Theo Cole, Arden's missing father, was still alive. Arden had spent most of her life believing her father had chosen to disappear. The truth was worse. Theo Cole had been imprisoned because he tried to protect her from the Voss family. Using routes outside the organization's security network, Damon, Arden, and Naomi traveled into Colorado's Rocky Mountains. Snow-covered peaks rose above pine valleys. Frozen waterfalls clung to dark cliffs, and narrow roads curved around alpine lakes. The facility appeared to be an exclusive rehabilitation center for wealthy clients. Behind its polished stone walls, however, it held witnesses, former employees, and political liabilities whose disappearances had been carefully designed to attract little attention. Many prisoners had been selected because they were poor, undocumented, or members of communities authorities were unlikely to search for. Arden realized the organization had not merely committed crimes. It had studied which human lives society considered easiest to erase. For Damon, the discovery exposed the systematic cruelty beneath the empire he inherited. His wealth had depended not only on violence, but on public indifference toward vulnerable people. Naomi identified an abandoned mountain service tunnel beneath the facility. Using her research and Damon's knowledge of our security systems, they entered without alerting the main guards. Arden found Theo inside a locked medical wing. Years of confinement had weakened him, but he recognized his daughter immediately. Shame covered his relief as he understood how much of her childhood had passed without him. Theo revealed that Lila had uncovered a trafficking network operated by Margot Voss and Gideon Shaw beneath the authority of Damon's father. He had attempted to move Lila and the evidence out of Chicago, but the warehouse fire was arranged to erase the investigation. Margot then manipulated Damon into believing a rival family had killed Lila. That lie shaped his violent rise to power and gave Margot greater control over the empire. Theo also believed Lila survived the fire. Arden struggled to separate Damon from a family that destroyed her childhood. Even if he had not ordered the crimes, his name, resources, and authority had protected the people responsible. Damon did not defend his ignorance. He released the prisoners and arranged medical transportation through contacts outside his organization. When Gideon's guards attacked the facility, Damon surrendered control of a strategic Voss territory to secure an evacuation corridor. An explosion triggered an avalanche that buried the main road. Arden guided the prisoners across an old suspension bridge above an alpine gorge, while Damon protected Theo from gunmen approaching through the snow. Before reaching safety, Theo gave Arden a sealed document he had preserved since the warehouse fire. It authorized the operation that led to his imprisonment. Arden expected to find Margot's or Gideon's name. Instead, the order carried Damon's signature. Damon recognized it as genuine. He remembered signing transportation documents during the week Lila disappeared, believing they covered legal cargo. His growing feelings for Arden now collided with proof that his carelessness may have helped destroy her family. Damon began to understand that loving her might require accepting consequences rather than proving innocence. Theo revealed that the original transportation records had been hidden inside a protected witness settlement in New Mexico. Then Arden read the final line of the authorization. Damon signed order listed both Theo Cole and Arden herself as approved targets for permanent removal. Damon had never intended to destroy Arden's family, but a signature made in comfort could still become a weapon when powerful people refused to question what their privilege protected. He traveled with Arden, Theo, and Naomi toward a hidden witness settlement near White Sands, New Mexico. White dunes stretched beneath brilliant skies, while desert mountains and cactus fields surrounded a compound connected by underground water tunnels. The settlement sheltered former Voss employees and trafficking witnesses under false identities. Damon studied the authorization bearing his signature and accepted that his carelessness had helped Margot commit violence. Arden refused to let him describe it as a misunderstanding. He had signed documents without examining who might suffer beneath his authority. Love, she understood, could not survive without accountability. The original records revealed that Damon had approved a general shipping operation. After receiving his signature, Margot replaced several pages and added the orders targeting Arden and Theo. Damon had not knowingly authorized their deaths, but his position had made the forgery possible. Theo explained that Lila had planned to show Damon the truth before he became Mafia King. Margot prevented the meeting, then used Lila's disappearance to convince him that violence was the only path to survival. Damon began transferring Voss properties and accounts into a protected restitution trust. Arden refused personal money or property from him. Wealth stolen from exploited families had to return to them before it could finance anyone else's future. For the first time, Damon stopped trying to solve Arden's life for her. That change brought them closer than protection ever had. Naomi interviewed elderly witnesses who remembered Lila escaping the warehouse fire. One woman revealed that Lila had later been transported through a California vineyard owned by Margot. Before they could trace the property, a satellite device inside the settlement activated. Arden discovered that one witness had been reporting their movements. The man had not acted for money. Margot was holding his missing daughter and had promised to keep her alive as long as he cooperated. Armed vehicles soon appeared across the White Dunes. Damon prepared to surrender control of the Voss Empire in exchange for Arden and Theo's safety. Arden stopped him before he could make another decision without her consent. Instead, she designed a plan to release selected evidence to investigators while keeping Lila's possible location encrypted. The witnesses escaped through underground water tunnels as Margot's convoy surrounded the compound. Damon disabled the vehicle's communications and trapped the guards behind reinforced gates rather than killing them. It was a clearer sign, yet that violence was no longer his first answer. At the tunnel exit, Gideon ambushed the group. He captured Naomi and Theo before Damon and Arden could reach them. Minutes later, Margot sent proof that both were alive and ordered Damon and Arden to attend a private gathering at her Napa Valley estate. The message also contained footage from the night Arden first appeared beneath the Chicago rain. Their meeting had never been accidental. Margot's final revelation was even more disturbing. Lila had personally arranged for Arden to be standing there. Heading 6, the vineyard where the powerful remove their masks. Word count, 573. The Voss Empire had survived because respectable people in tailored suits treated exploited workers as numbers and missing families as acceptable business losses. Damon and Arden entered Margot's private Napa Valley estate as the sun lowered across golden vineyards, redwood groves, and rolling hills. Business leaders, judges, politicians, and criminal partners gathered beside flower gardens and a river reflecting the California sky. Beneath the property, Theo and Naomi were imprisoned inside an underground wine cellar. Margot intended to force Damon to surrender control of the Voss organization before eliminating both witnesses. Arden entered the gathering disguised as part of the event staff. Years of working emergency shifts and assisting overlooked communities had taught her how easily wealthy people ignored anyone serving them. She moved unnoticed between tables while recording executives discussing immigrant laborers, poor neighborhoods, and missing workers as disposable resources. Their words exposed the truth. The empire had depended on prejudice as much as violence. Damon entered the central pavilion and publicly began dissolving every alliance connected to trafficking and forced labor. Several captains who had served him for years turned against him, fearing the loss of profitable routes and political protection. Gideon used Damon's search for Arden as proof that their Mafia king had become emotionally weak. Damon did not deny that the citywide search had been reckless. He accepted responsibility for the fear it caused and refused to blame Arden for choices he had made himself. While the gathering turned against him, Arden reached the underground cellar and freed Naomi. Theo had already been moved elsewhere. Naomi transmitted Arden's recordings and recovered financial files to journalists. As the evidence became public, officials began leaving the estate and denying their connection to Margot. Damon completed the final transfer of his controlling assets into the restitution trust. Margot could no longer take possession of the empire by arranging his death. Gideon attacked Damon inside the river pavilion. Arden activated the estate's emergency barriers, sealing the exits and separating Gideon from his armed supporters. Damon defeated him but refused to execute him. Instead, he forced Gideon to reveal where Margot had taken Lila. Lila had survived the warehouse fire. For 12 years, she had been held on a private island in the Florida Keys because Margot needed access to the evidence only she could decode. Before security teams could stop her, Margot escaped by helicopter with Theo. She also confirmed that Lila had arranged the rainy night encounter. Lila selected Arden because Theo's daughter was the only person Damon might search for with enough determination to expose the entire hidden network. The revelation left Arden questioning whether the moment that changed their lives had ever belonged to them. Damon feared that even their connection had been manufactured. Arden recognized that their first meeting had been manipulated, but every sacrifice, refusal, and act of trust afterward had resulted from their own choices. Damon finally stopped seeing Arden as a mysterious woman he needed to find. He saw her as an equal who remained free to choose whether she stood beside him. They prepared to follow Margot to the Florida Keys and rescue Theo. Then a live security feed appeared on Gideon's phone, showing Lila Voss alive and being prepared for execution at sunrise. Damon had turned an entire city upside down to find Arden. Now, rescuing the sister he had mourned for 12 years might require him to let Arden disappear from his life forever. Using an abandoned coastal route hidden inside Lila's records, Damon and Arden approached the private island in the Florida Keys. Turquoise water surrounded white beaches, mangrove forests, coral reefs, luxury villas, an old watchtower rising above the shoreline. From the mainland, Naomi coordinated with federal investigators, while Damon and Arden entered the island through a flooded tunnel beneath the cliffs. Margot held Theo and Lila inside an underground bunker below the watchtower. Damon found his sister alive, but weakened by years of imprisonment. Lila had survived the warehouse fire, only to be hidden because Margot needed the evidence she had encrypted. The rainy night encounter had been Lila's design. She had sent a courier with her silver compass because she believed Damon would ignore anonymous files, but could never ignore the woman carrying the last object connected to his dead sister. Arden struggled with the truth. Lila's plan had turned her into emotional bait and placed her life in danger without consent. Damon accepted that his citywide search had expanded that danger. His obsession had blocked roads, frightened innocent communities, and treated Arden as someone to capture rather than someone free to choose. His actions now carried a different promise. Arden would never again become property, leverage, or reward. They freed Theo and Lila, but before reaching the surface, Gideon appeared beside Margot. He had escaped federal custody and returned to the woman who had protected his power. Gideon's loyalty came from resentment. Raised in poverty, he believed the Voss hierarchy had given him the authority respectable society denied him. Arden understood the wound behind that belief, but personal suffering could not excuse exploiting people with even less protection. A violent confrontation spread across the island. Margot ordered the evidence destroyed and prepared to escape by boat. Lila reached the island's communication system and released the remaining files to journalists and federal authorities. Damon gave up his final escape route, so the witnesses could reach Coast Guard vessels approaching through the reef. From the watchtower, Gideon aimed at Damon. Arden pushed Damon out of the line of fire. The bullet missed her, but the damaged platform collapsed beneath her feet. She fell into the storm-driven ocean as fire spread to the watchtower behind them. Damon entered the water and searched through waves, smoke, and floating wreckage. Coast Guard teams arrived and continued the rescue operation, but Arden could not be found. Margot was arrested while attempting to escape through the mangroves. Theo survived, and Damon was finally reunited with Lila. The Empire was exposed. His sister was alive. Yet Damon believed the woman he had searched across Chicago had died saving him. For the first time, he refused to command another search built on fear. He allowed trained rescue teams to work and accepted that Arden's freedom mattered more than his need to possess an answer. Evidence later suggested that a private medical vessel had crossed the area before the Coast Guard arrived. 3 weeks after Arden disappeared, Damon received a photograph of her standing beside a lighthouse in Washington, alive and watching the ocean. Damon had once turned Chicago upside down for a woman he had seen only once. Now that he finally knew where Arden was, he had to prove his love by allowing her to decide whether she wanted to be found. Arden had survived the fall from the watchtower after a volunteer medical vessel pulled her from the storm-driven ocean. Federal investigators moved her to a protected clinic on Washington's Olympic Peninsula, while Margot's remaining allies were arrested. When Damon received the photograph of Arden beside the lighthouse, He did not send guards after her. Instead, he dismantled the surveillance network he had used to control Chicago. Private checkpoints disappeared, blocked roads reopened, and communities harmed during his search received legal assistance. Voss properties and hidden accounts were transferred into restitution programs, allowing former workers and trafficking survivors to receive compensation. Damon also gave federal investigators evidence against corrupt judges, police officers, politicians, and business partners who had protected the organization. Margot faced charges involving trafficking, forced labor, attempted murder, corruption, and conspiracy. Gideon was captured after trying to reach Arden's protected location. Lila began rebuilding her life by publicly documenting the victims whose stories had been ignored. Theo reconnected with Arden, though both understood that years of separation could not be repaired through one reunion. Arden continued working with Naomi to create a medical and legal support network for exploited workers and vulnerable families. Damon traveled to Washington alone. He brought no guards and carried no weapon. When he reached the coastal clinic, he remained outside instead of entering without permission. Arden chose to meet him near the historic lighthouse. Rocky beaches stretched beneath bright coastal skies, evergreen forests covered the hills, and waves struck the sea cliffs below them. Their reunion was restrained because survival had not erased the harm between them. Damon's actions acknowledged a truth he had once been too powerful to understand. Turning an entire city upside down had never been proof of love. It had been proof that he did not know the difference between devotion and control. Arden recognized that he had surrendered power without expecting her as a reward. She agreed to rebuild their relationship slowly and under her own terms. She kept her career, home, finances, and independence. Damon supported her work without attempting to direct it. Together, they established a national foundation offering medical care, legal representation, and safe housing to exploited workers. Damon did not become innocent simply because he changed. He continued cooperating with investigators and accepted responsibility for the empire he had commanded. Months later, Arden stood beside a clear mountain lake near the Olympic rainforest. Damon joined her, but he did not stand in front of her or block the road ahead. He stood beside her. Their relationship became possible only after Damon stopped searching for someone to possess and began respecting the woman Arden had chosen to become. Arden had not been given a new life by a Mafia king. She had saved herself by demanding truth, freedom, and equal choice. While restoring Lila's silver compass, Arden discovered another hidden compartment. Inside was a recent photograph of Theo standing beside the leader of another powerful crime family, dated only 2 weeks earlier.